Tonight, the team and I are going to be interviewing Jared McGilliard. He's an executive producer, director, and founder of Nomadica Films. And tonight, he's going to give us a sneak peek about what it was like working with Adam Davis out in the wilderness. And we may get a sneak peek about season 5 of MonsterQuest. So stay tuned for encounters that are beyond the ordinary. All right, we are with the great Jared McGilliard. Thank you so much for coming on Beyond the Ordinary. How are you doing?
I'm so good. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much. So, I hear that you have a new launch of Monster Quest. Tell us about it.
Oh man, that's the greatest reboot in history, pun intended. But because it is for the History Channel. Yeah, so we're rebooting Monster Quest into season 5, and yeah, it's just so excited to bring the franchise back.
That is so awesome. I'm so excited. I know we all are.
Yeah,
Good, good,
and
good.
it's great because obviously, as you know, I was on Monster Quest with you, so I'll just ask you a couple of questions. But the first one is I was thinking about this today, and I was really curious about this, knowing you as I do, and knowing you're a naturally creative person. So, have you had any stories that have changed your opinion as a result of the series? Let me give you an example. I did not believe in Dogman until I researched and encountered Martin Groves, and I found him to be a very credible person. I admit I was wrong about that. I have changed my opinion. Is there anything that you in the stories that you've done with this new Monster Quest that have caused you to do the same?
Oh my God, Adam, absolutely, absolutely. And we have to give a shout out to the old Monster Quest. It's how you and I met each other. So
Yeah, it is
we got to bring it back. No, Adam, absolutely. I mean, oh, where to even begin to answer that question? I mean, I would say Dogman for sure.
Mhm.
That feels like a very real possibility to me. Any sort of shadow creatures, entities, shadow creatures. I've never looked at the inside of my bedroom the same way after hearing some of those stories. I I've always sort of had a belief in life outside of our planet. Aliens. That scares me very deeply. Those stories continue to really scare me. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, growing up in the Pacific Northwest.
Ooh,
Adam, our experience up in the North
that
Cascades,
was freaky.
that was freaky. So I feel like that's one that I've always sort of had a belief that
Uh-huh.
there was something there. I think I just had really not spoken honestly to many people who have had a dogman encounter, a shadow creature encounter, anything like that. And I had multiple conversations during this series that completely reframed my perspective to the viability of those creatures' existence.
That's good when you have that cognitive, that the moment when you say, "Oh my gosh, this thing actually might be real," and that I think you're going to do that very well in this series. You already have, and I think that you're going to do that very well going forward. So that's a good job. Now I have a question for you, which is about right on my book on my second extreme expeditions. I have a laugh at myself, right? Because this actually happened. There's a photograph of me smiling on the front cover of the book, right? And then I have that conversation with you. So this is for the Abominable Snowman episode, ladies and gentlemen. And in it, I said to you, because we had Ian there, do you remember the
Mhm.
UN
Oh yeah, of
ambassador?
course.
Ian, and I said, are we going to have, you said, oh Ian, you're going to be doing the low level, the stuff here, like 8,000 feet or so. He said, Adam, I want you to show him how to work the trail cams and all that lot, yeah. And I was like confused, and I was like, well, where am I going? And you went, you buddy, you're going right up there, and that was that mountain. That's that mountain. And I want you to know, I put the me laughing just before we go up the mountain on the cover of my book, just because I was laughing at myself. Because 30 seconds later, I realized my ass is going up that mountain with Mr. Yagihara.
That's right. That's right.
And one last thing, and then I'll ask you the question. And the thing that made me laugh is when we got to the top of the mountain, MB, who was the Sherpa, he was like, because I think our base camp was something like 12,000 feet, and then we were going up. Me and Mr. Yagihara and the other were going up past that, because you sent me past that. You were not satisfied with having me in the base camp. My ass was going onto that.
Hey, Adam, if I was
going, the mountain,
you were going.
Yeah, exactly. You never went. You sent the other guy. I went.
No, I went. With
you. You went. No, you went to the top. Yeah, actually, you did go to the top. Fair enough. You did it. Yeah, you did go to the top. But the other thing I was thinking about as we were going along today was when MB, the Sherpa, was going, no drinking, no smoking, no. And then Mr. Yagihara, who'd been as quiet as a mouse, 2 hours later, he's had half a bottle of whiskey and 20 cigarettes at the top of the mountain. It's like, oh my God.
Oh, MB was smoking at the store.
Yeah. And then there was like the bizarrest party at one of the highest altitudes in the Himalayas, suddenly going off. It really is a spontaneous thing. It's great. So my question is for you. Your friend Sean, when we went, he was one of the cameramen, Sean. Did he ever forgive you for taking him up that mountain pass, that perilous mountain pass?
Oh, I mean the one where the path had disappeared?
The path that did not exist.
The path did not exist.
Basically, jump across some debris that was like thousands of feet.
Well, funny enough, Sean worked on the reboot of MonsterQuest as well.
Really?
So he came back. So
sweet.
You know, let me tell you. Yeah, always for as long as you get through it, and you can look back and have a good laugh and sort of say we survived that, then it becomes sort of a badge of honor. I feel like in the moment,
a badge of honor.
Yeah, in the moment, I don't think he was thinking of forgiveness. He point to consider forgiveness while we were out there. But yes, after the fact, absolutely. That was a great memory.
Yeah, I wanted to just give you I just wanted to give you a couple of memories in my head of that thing that I loved, and there were plenty more, but I just thought I'd give us a few moments because I'll come back to you. But I know Melissa has a question for you, which is a really cool one.
I do. Is it my turn? I'm so excited.
Yeah, it is your turn.
Okay. So we have been on location recently in the LBL, and we're working on a documentary, and we also shot some Beyond the Ordinary talk shows while we were out
cool
in the field, and it was really fun. And we had we had some great scenery. It was awesome. We had really great cameras up. We had multiple cameras up. Lots of audio going. And when Greg got back to do his editing, post-production magic, all of a sudden there was no data. I mean, it wasn't scrambled or anything. It was just gone. And it wasn't on the SD card, wasn't on his computer. It was nowhere. And we all watched him double check the cameras. We all watched him download it to his computer, and we watched some of the clips from his computer. So we all know it was there. But when he went to do the post-production, it was gone. And it was like 1 or 2 cameras were just wiped, or the audio was just wiped. Have you ever experienced any sort of anomaly like that in post-production?
Not with anyone who still works with us.
Fair
No,
enough.
I don't think I've ever experienced trying to think now. Anything where just footage has just disappeared like that. I mean, it's interesting. I remember the time where we'd be filming and we had our hard tapes, right? And I remember we'd put them all together and we'd wrap gaff tape around them, and then it would be shipped off and you label them. And now obviously it's all media management, it's all putting in the computer. and still have so much anxiety over that. Sometimes I just miss the tape, just like that hard data. But no, I've never had that before. That's so peculiar. What do you think it is?
I mean, where we were was an area of high strangeness, and there were anomalous readings on all the different instruments that people had out multiple times.
Hmm.
So all I can figure is, maybe the equipment was exposed to high levels of electromagnetic whatever, or other things that we're unaware of or whatever, and it just wiped it was just so odd. And Greg, I believe you said that you spoke with another production company that had had something similar happen. Am I right on that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We were. I was with Tony Merkel's group, and we were filming the metal project, project of theirs. And I'd gotten in touch with one of their editors, and it asked me if I had any data or like film to ever just disappear. And I was like, well, what a coinky dink. This was just happening to me. And so apparently it happened to them too at the Meadow. But one of the things I thought was interesting was that I think it was one of the night befores or after, I can't remember exactly the chronology, but I had gotten really, really ill in one of the nights that we were filming. And coincidentally, that night, almost the exact same time, there was another crew member that was down from where we were. He had an EMF detector, and that EMF detector went off, and it had pegged into a dangerous level. So, and it was at the exact same time that I had gotten really, really sick. So I'm sitting here thinking, well, there was a correlation between me getting, sick and ill and this anomalous EMF detection that had went off. So I'm thinking that maybe, there was some kind of EMF field that interfered with these SD cards or my computers or something. I don't know exactly what I was going on with it, but I know it was strange.
So
But
strange.
Natalie did bring up a point. We were talking about
Yeah.
it just before you came on. She did bring up a good point that it's always the camera that's pointed or focused on the wood line. It's always
Hmm.
that camera. So that's I just thought that was really, really interesting. And then I guess the second part to that question, since Greg brought it up, Greg actually got sick a couple of times while we were out. We were out for a whole week. And it just made sense to me that he would be targeted with whatever, because he's the cameraman. So I just
Hmm.
was curious, if you've had the camera in your hand, did you ever feel sick? Did you ever feel like you were maybe being the target of something? Mm.
No, not really. I mean, I did I worked in National Geographic with two deployments in Afghanistan. A couple moments there, I felt a little nervous in my belly, but nothing ever that like, um, I've never had anything like that, like in a moment happen like that. But I can it's not that I wouldn't imagine that happening in this. I think that
Mhm.
there's I always like to say this, that I always think that if we feel like we've understand everything that's out there in the planet, like what a boring existence. Like
Sure.
truly believe that there's more out there that like our eyes cannot see, our ears cannot hear, our cameras cannot pick up. And I think if we were to encounter something like that, it would make complete sense to me that if it affected something like a video or film, some digital signal, that it certainly would affect our bodies as well. So to be honest, I am no expert, but the correlation between those two things, I kind of it makes sense to me. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
And
pretty
I have
interesting.
another question for you. It's sort of related along those lines. What has been your most challenging episode to film, and why?
Well, it's an interesting. The new Monster Quest series is interesting because it's different than the previous one, right? The previous versions of the series of the show went on these very challenging expeditions like Adam and I went on, in search for evidence or to evolve sort of our understanding of that cryptid or a piece of evidence. And that was a very challenging episode to do. There's no doubt about that. I think in this new series, the challenges sort of surface a little bit differently. That these are first person accounts with witnesses who have seen something. Pretty simple sitting those people down. I think I was really floored by how credible people were. And I think that's obviously what we were going for, is people whose stories
Mm,
for me really pass muster, people whose stories that, I think so often, what makes a story believable is who's telling it. I mean, that's
mhm.
really what it comes down to. I expected to have challenges with sort of the believability of some of these stories, either reading them on paper or looking at a Zoom interview that our casting team had captured. But I have to say, and I'm not blowing smoke, I I did not doubt any of them. People spoke with such conviction, such detail. I mean, when you have something traumatic happen to yourself, whether it was a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, it follows you. It really does
Mm,
follow you.
it
And
does.
I will say, like, these people, the people that we spoke with, these are not just sort of like a blip on the radar that they sort of ponder every once in a while. These are deep emotional things that have resonated with them for years, that still have this air of mystery. They're still grappling with it. And the reason that they can talk about it with such detail is because those really intense memories, like Adam, you and I in
Yeah.
Nepal, they live right on that surface and they're really easy to access. So in terms of the challenges, I don't think any of the episodes were particularly challenging. Obviously we did the interviews and then we did these, really high end recreations, right? And those were, that in itself was like a really fun challenge to do, which is how do we elevate these stories visually so the audience feels like they're almost right there with them. Adam, I think about Martin's story. I feel a
Yeah.
lot of pressure, with really
And I
vintage
remember you
Jared.
feeling that pressure. But the point I'd make to you, because listening to what you've just said to Greg, I thought that was very interesting. Because I remember when you first started out on the journey, he was like, I'm going to redo Monster Quest. And I was telling you some of the stories, and you were like, he did what? Or he said what? And you were like, trying to process it because it was so unusual. Well, now to hear you say that, you obviously you carefully, I'm sure there was a thorough selection process, but the stories you got were compelling. That's really interesting for me, knowing you, that you actually sat down. I'm sure you sat down like I did when I heard Marty's story. And Jim Powell, for example, another one of the
Hmm.
people who is on your show, and you think, actually, wow, this is an amazing, amazing thing. And all of the people in front of you have had their own extraordinary encounters. And I think for me, the ones I've had, and feel free to disagree with me, but I've thought, I used to I'm pretty well educated. I've got this degree and this postgrad, whatever. And then when I had something happen to me that was extraordinary, I thought, actually, I really know very little about how the universe really works. Absolute Luddite, absolute Luddite. Forget your education; it goes out the window. Do you feel the same or different?
um I don't think you can really educate yourself going into these
Oh,
experiences. I mean, I really don't. It's not like people who have encounters, there's not a type. There really is no type of person that encounters something unexpected in their world. They're judges, they're survivalists, they're, you know, fathers, mothers, nurses, doctors, police officers, military personnel. I mean, that's something that I think that really struck me, is there's not a type. I think sometimes you sit back and you think, oh, the cryptid community, but the
yeah.
cryptid community is so diverse. There are all of these really individualized, specialized people that were living their life in a very linear way, with a clear set of, as human beings, right? We organize our mind in a way where we have a set of knowns and unknowns, and that's how we function, right? Even about people. Like, I look at you, Adam. I'm like, this is what I know about Adam. This is what I don't know about Adam. But my truth sort of helped me figure out how to approach you in terms of organizing my thoughts. And all of these people who were living in a very linear fashion with a specific set of truths about what makes up the world, encountered something that shifted that in a very dramatic way. Sometimes it was scary, sometimes it was just fascinating and incredibly curious, but it's something that has completely shifted their perspective. And I found that to be fascinating. In inevitably, what we were capturing is in a moment where people's understanding of the known world shifted. And that's and that, I don't know how anyone on the planet that's not fascinated by that moment. And if you can't judge it, like, you can't, there's no judging, oh, I don't believe that exists, or I do believe that exists. It didn't even cross my mind. I believe that these people encountered or had an experience that changed their entire perspective of the world, the entire way they think about the world. And you know, and I think that that's just absolutely fascinating. I don't know if that answered your question, Adam, but
It
that's
does
my
answer my
opinion.
question. It does answer my question, because when I had something happen to me in Oregon, it's a whole other story. That was exactly what I thought. I came away and I thought, actually, I have no clue about the world, and that's really something that stays with me for the rest of my life, and it is. And you replay these intensities
Mhm.
over and over in your head, so you're absolutely spot on.
Absolutely. I agree because I know the experiences we've had over just the last year have just completely changed my perspective. And so, Jared, you interview a lot of people and hear their testimony about their experiences. Has there ever been one or more than one that you've heard and then you say, I really need to go visit this area. I need to spend a week or a month in this area and just dive in deep? Because I know that's how I feel about a lot of places. So, where would you like to go?
Okay, well, there's two answers to this question. One is the places I really want to go, and one is the places I never want to be within 100 miles of that place, like in my life, because I think it's so traumatic. You know, I
Mhm.
mean, um, uh, I think I have to start with Martin, you know, and the
Yeah.
land between the lakes. Obviously, we
Yes.
did get to go there and visit and go into that place, and I think you know we didn't get to investigate it like I would have liked to. You know, I would have liked to be there at night and had a very different experience, but it was much more about sort of just seeing the place and the curiosities and the unusualness of land between the lakes. But that's one I absolutely would like to spend more time in. There's a really interesting story. This cultural anthropologist guy named Kenneth, who will actually be in this Friday's episode that's coming up. He's an anthropologist, and he was out of Maryland, and he went into the woods of Maryland and had an incredible encounter, which he thinks is sort of like a Bigfoot Sasquatch type creature.
Mhm.
That one was fascinating. You know, I think somebody of his credibility having the um, I mean, he's credible, but also just like his 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 area of specialty. You know, going into that place and having that experience was really interesting to me. Um, I didn't know much about the skunk ape of Florida.
Ah,
You know,
yes.
Stacy Brown is another one. His stories this Friday as comes out in Friday's episode as well. I I have not spent a lot of time in, you know, Mayaca or different places like that. And I know he wasn't there, but that would be fascinating to me as well.
It's a
You know,
cool
It
place to
is.
research.
Mhm.
yeah, Florida's just fascinating and visually really striking. And so you know, and I go back, you know, Adam, to like something that Ian Redmond, who was with us in Nepal, said to me. I remember I was sitting down interviewing him one day, and he's like, and I said, "So Ian, what do you think? Do you think something like is this? Could there really be, you know, a Yeti here? Like, could that exist in the Himalayas and Nepal?" And he was said, "You know, Jared, like, um, I won't try to do his British accent here, but he said, you know,
I
he
wanted
said,
to so
yeah,
bad.
you can,
I
you
was
can."
hoping you were going to fall into it.
Yeah, I almost did, and then I was like, no, 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 this is being recorded. I can't do that. I remember he said, you know, back in the day, you know, the mountain gorillas of Virunga were discovered, you know, not that long ago, and before then it was travelers' tales and local folklore. And here you are in an even more remote area of the world, Nepal, which is incredibly hard to access, and you have these stories of the Yeti, the Baba snowman that exist in local folklore, and mountain climbers, Reinhold Messner, these people who exist on the fringes of our world, where most people would never get the moment to experience it. Or, for example, we can't mount cameras in these places and sort of see what happens. You know, it's interesting. We live in a world now where there are cameras everywhere. You know, everywhere, and they catch unusual things. But you go to these really remote parts of the world, there's nothing there watching. There's nothing there recording. You know, it's oral traditions and histories. And so, you know, I've always been really drawn to remote areas of our world. I think that you know, there's not much of our planet that hasn't been touched by humans, but that's a part that I always feel like there's something to discover
There's
there.
still
There's a
some.
mystery. There's yeah, there are still
There's
some.
still
And
some.
so I'm drawn to those places. I think when I think about the places that where stories have happened, um, you know, but there's some that I don't ever want to go near. Like I said, this is too frightening. Yeah.
Well, on the Yeti, very briefly, you know, I heard a story about a Yeti when I was with Josh Gates, and there was a farmer, and he described how he'd seen one, and he said he was in his fields and his pasture, and he saw it. It was about 6 foot tall, conical head, and the first thing he heard was a whistling sound.
Mhm.
Right, so that's a remote area in Nepal. Cut back. 10 years or so before, I was with National Geographic for their Is It Real series, and I
Mhm.
was filming in Mongolia. And they went home, and I carried on doing my stuff. You know what I'm like, so I was there for like another month, just doing things. I ended up getting this battered ass Jeep all the way back to Ulaanbaatar, just like didn't know, just using the GPS to get back. But that's a whole other story. But I met this farmer, and he said he'd seen a herdsman, sorry. He said he'd seen an almas. And I said, what happened? He said, well, first of all, I heard this strange whistling sound. He said, and then I heard, saw this conical head, this fur hair on its back. So basically, it just adds to your point, because there were these two people in very remote areas on different sides of the world describing the same creature to the T. There's no way they could have possibly met one another, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one story that really stood out to me, John Mianchinsky. Do you know that name?
Yeah, I do.
So John, we interviewed John, and he had an encounter in the Wind River Mountains in Wyoming. And I mean, that's just an area of the world I'd love to sort of see. And he was like living with these, these mountain sheep, basically, very Jane Goodall inspired situation when he had this encounter. And then he went on to do this, basically his own investigation. And his story is fascinating. But that area is interesting. I mean, one, it's accessible, so I feel like it's an accessible place that I could go.
Yeah.
He also just made it sound incredibly interesting. But the activity that he said that he has witnessed there since then, and from people, has been fascinating. So that's one that's just piqued my imagination about
What
going to that
activity
area.
can you give us a teaser? Because we want to know, because they're going to ask questions about it
Uh,
after you say so.
yeah. Well, I mean, he had an experience while he was in his tent one night, basically, and he thought, he was basically living with these sheep, alone and isolating, and just and watching them, and witnessing. He was studying their food habits, because the national park, so he was working for the national park. They would basically figure out, what parts of the park they were going to open up and where people could access, based on sort of the grazing and migratory patterns of these sheep. And so he
Yeah.
would go study them so that they could come up with their. I'm probably butchering this, and he would describe it completely differently, but from what I remember, this is accurate.
Yeah.
And so, but one night he was just laying in his tent, and he had to take up this tent. Um, he went to go exchange his tent, and the only tent left was this one with this bacon grease stain on the side of it. And the guy was like, "Don't take that tent." He's like, "I'll wash it off. It'll be fine." He felt very comfortable. Like, basically he lived in the mountain range up there. So he took it up there, and what do you know? Like a very large animal came up and started looking at this bacon grease stain. And he hit it in the snout, and it ran off, and it came back a third time. And if you studied anything about animal behavior, when especially like a grizzly, which are up in those mountains, start to continue to come back, it's very dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Because they have no fear. Well, it came back, except this time it stood up, and it put its hand into its tent, and he looked up through the moonlight, and he could see it had an opposable thumb. And he says it was at that moment that he realized he was dealing with something that he knew nothing about. And the story just gets wild from there, and he goes back, and he ends up doing this sort of off the record investigation, and talks to all types of people, and gets hair samples that he sends in to different scientists for them to evaluate. And you'll have to watch the episode, but the conclusions are
Yeah.
fascinating. But I remember I left that, and this was before Jeff Muldrum's tragic passing. But I remember leaving that conversation and thinking, man, I'm gonna go back out with John and Jeff. And I emailed Jeff, and I was like, hey, I just had this incredible conversation with John. Love to hop on with you. And he passed, I think, like a week later, or something, week or two
Yeah.
later.
It happened very quickly.
Very quickly. And but I was just, it's a guy who just has lived in this area for so long. He's studied it. He knows it. He's spoken to people that have had encounters with it. He's found hair samples that he's gotten tested. I mean, if that doesn't make you curious to want to go look in that area, I don't know what would. You have evidence. You have a credible perspective. But he felt like we were on the verge, on the cusp of really getting some real evidence. and there's some other wild parts of that story, but yeah, John was a fascinating one. That I think sometimes what pulls me back to an area is one just because it's an amazing place. Like Adam, I'd love to go to Mongolia. I'm so jealous you've been to Mongolia.
Oh,
Other
Mongolia is wild. But then I've always wanted for the Yeti, I've always wanted to go to Bhutan. Yeah, and I was gonna do an episode with MonsterQuest called The Beast of Bhutan for the next series. And then the show got cancelled and they brought some crap in that didn't work out. And I was like, oh my God. And I was going, and I was gonna go to Bhutan with Josh Gates, but then I couldn't because I had to get to San Diego for my visa to enter the US. I was like 3 more days, man. So I've tried, like, Bhutan has always been my place. Mongolia is fabulous. You'd love it as well. You would love it. But if you do go, you've got to have a go at the wrestling. I did, landed on my ass really. but what they like is they like the fact that you try. Yeah, you're not going to beat them. So when they come, like some dude, you know what I'm like. So I get.
Is there pictures of this of you wrestling in
I'll see if
Mongolia?
I can think of that. So I did that. I did that wrestle. I went to the Gobi Desert as well, and they said, you know, like I have no filter with when it comes to recklessness. So they said,
Hey, by the way, Adam, we all depend on that. That's why you're here.
That's our comic relief.
Yeah.
So they said there's a Nadam champion here. Now Nadam's like their big event, yeah. He said they said, would you like to wrestle him because you're a brave British warrior? And I was like, where does this brave British warrior thing come from?
Yeah, but I kind of like the sound of that, so I'll
yeah,
go.
I realized that they were just flattering me, yeah, to get me to do it, yeah. So the dude comes out and he looks like Oddjob from Goldfinger. He's like all oiled up, like, you know, the dude comes out like that, and I was like, oh shoot, I can't do this because this is going on YouTube, so I cannot swear. But I was like, oh, sugar and spite and puppy dog tails. I'm in serious trouble here. Anyway, I had a go. And of course, I'm not going to say I tossed him out, nothing like that. He beat my ass, you know. I'd never done it before. He beat my ass comprehensively. But they liked the fact that I had a go at him, you know what I mean? And I did that. So they brought me loads of this. What is it? Camel vodka, which tasted really good at the time, but I bitterly regretted the next day.
Yeah. I feel like there's two things of travel that are in there. You have to prove yourself through physical challenges and eating and drinking things you may regret the next day. It's part of the joys of travel.
Part of it.
So I think there is another show to be had, Jared. I mean, a special edition of you and Adam going back to wrestle. That would be awesome. I want to see that.
Well, yeah, the famed British warrior, of course.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have posters of him back there right now. Yeah.
But he's got to have a mask and a cape on.
Yeah, I was thinking a little like Nacho Libre style.
Yeah,
exactly.
Going in all unbuff. Yeah. I read about these gladiators, and these gladiators don't look all ripped and that in real life. They look like they hadn't worked out for ages, and they were like called the barley men and all that. They were big, but not like that. So that's maybe the look. I'm going to say I'm a Roman gladiator, a genuine Roman gladiator.
Yeah, you know what that is, Adam? That's dad strength right there. Like no one looks at just dad strength.
Dad bod.
Dad bod. Yeah.
So, Greg, you had a question.
Yeah. So, Jared, I know for me, when we went to the LBL, we had all kinds of crazy encounters over there. Saw some Bigfoot, saw these crazy orbs. But one of the things that was a paradigm shift for me and was actually more shocking than all of those was I saw a portal. You know, we were out one night and I saw a glow that I hadn't seen before, and I was like, "What? That's interesting." So I moved over to where I could actually see the origins of the glow, and lo and behold, it was a portal, and you could see like into it. Anyway, so I was like looking into. I don't know if it was another world or not. It could have been on the other side of the earth for all I know. Don't know where it was, but it was daylight wherever it was, and it was like lush vegetation and all that other stuff. And it was like. And I was just gobsmacked. And it was a paradigm shift for me. I was like, wow, these portals do exist. They are very, very real. So I was interested. Have you ever had a paradigm shift for you when you've been out investigating? I don't know, these crazy places that you've had to go in the past.
Well, no, can I ask a question of your? I can't just let that statement go by without asking a follow-up question because that's really fascinating, Greg. So
Yes.
did you think about going closer to it, like, and approaching it more? Did it disappear? Did it just stay there and you walked away? What happened?
Well, it stayed there for I would guess maybe 30 to 40 seconds, and then somebody had shined a flashlight down toward where that was, and then that made it like evaporate or just disappeared. As soon as you shined a light on it, poof, it was gone, right? So, and then a few minutes later, an orb came up right from where that portal was. But I was sitting there, I was like mesmerized when I was looking at it. I was like, am I really seeing this? Because I actually had to process what I was looking at, right? And and it was like a jungle on the other side. It was very lush vegetation, green, and it was dead. It was winter where we were, and in the middle of the night. And it was very rectangular. It had like 90-degree edges on it. I was like, this is so interesting. Um, I did not have an urge to walk toward it because I had interviewed other people who had supposedly walked into a portal, and it didn't work out good for them. They're not here anymore. So yeah, I didn't. That was in the back of my mind. I was like, I'm not going to approach this, but it's fun to watch it while it was right over there, right? But it was a paradigm shift for me. And I was like, it was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. And to be honest with you, we had a Bigfoot encounter it was on the other side of the truck from us. So,
Mm.
you know, but the portal was more shocking to me than seeing the Bigfoot.
Yeah, I
So,
can understand that because I feel like that's such a we have a one a story that we heard, and that'll be in the series, is of this woman who had a time slip experience
Ah,
when she was young. And that was, again, I think one thing that's really cool about this new season of Monster Quest, it's just not like the encounter and we're moving on to the next. It's a lot of historical data and information and trends and where this is all happening. For me, I'm pretty curious dude, and I like kind of like, I find these, I've never heard of a time slip before. But I'm investigating this time slip, and I'm figuring out, oh, it happened in London in this year, and then over here at this time, and that there are these. Often I think my perspective beforehand is that there are a lot of one-off instances, like a one-off, like Greg, like, oh, Greg's probably the only person that's seen a portal in that place. But I would bet you are not the only one. And I just say that because there are, I think one thing I just did not realize before going into the series and in the series is that these individual encounters or moments are all part of a pattern. There are patterns that exist in all of these places. There's deep history and patterns and times where these, there are a string of encounters in places all around specific times and localized in specific places. And that to me was you know, while we weren't necessarily, the goal of the show is to sort of like, okay, we're going to go out and investigate and try to evolve it. What it did do though is it did give me a much greater context and understanding for that what that one person had experienced. And while I don't think the Monster Quest audience is not just for like those who believe or don't believe. I think that the goal is to try to find an audience that were just curious. And I think if we hit, I kept saying this to my team is like, we're not trying to convince anyone that this did or did not happen. We're simply trying to get them to ponder that it might have, that the world might be a little bit
mm,
different than what that they expect. And I always say, like, if you can just get people to ponder something for a moment, for me, that's all I'm doing, right? You're nudging them a little bit off of their own sort of like preconditioned understanding of the realities of the world. And not everyone's going to have an experience like you had, Greg, with portals or anything like that. But like a story about somebody who encounters a portal and a little bit of history around it can get an audience to say, well, maybe that does exist. Maybe the world is a little bit different than just what I see out my window here. And I think that that's pretty cool as far as you think about like the functionality and the purpose of these series. And I think of Monster Quest. I like that. I like that it gives, hopefully makes the audience feel a little bit more curious about the world around them, and just looks maybe look with a bit more curiosity at the tree line next time they next time they head out. But no, I'm not. As far as paradigm shifts, I mean, I've had a ton of those. I feel like fatherhood is a paradigm shift itself, but I think that, like, I think if we're all paying attention, as we sort of go through life, is full of a lot of those paradigm shifts. Some not as quite as aggressive as a portal. I've never seen anything like that before. But if I do, Greg, you'll be the first one I reach out to say, oh my God, I've seen it too, because that's fascinating. Really, really cool.
Yeah, we went back to the LVL and had a somewhat similar experience with a portal, but this time we had these entities crawl out and got aggressive. Have you ever had anything absolutely crazy? Because there was one that came after us and charged us. Have you ever had that happen to you, where you had an entity or something unknown come after you or be aggressive towards you?
Well, I mean, you're talking to someone who I have a very wild imagination. So sometimes I can't always tell, like, what my brain is sort of creating in a moment, and what is actually there. I mean, I think I've been lost a lot in the woods as a kid growing up in the Northwest. I've been lost a lot, roaming around the woods with my buddies as kids. And I had a lot of times where I would just scare the heck out of myself with eyes down by a river that I can't, you can't see the shape, and you just see the eyes. And I think in those situations as well, for me personally, the woods at night is a very quiet place. And I think that's one thing that's, like, whether it's like the snow or the woods, where the smallest of sounds are just so thunderous, And
What
so
about
I have
that
had
time?
some.
Sorry, Joe. I just wanted. It said, what about that time with you when we had that Bigfoot encounter and your buddy heard it roaring and his face just dropped and we had it on camera? Do you remember
Oh
what
yeah.
was his name? What's
Oh
his
yeah.
name?
Oh, Ray, my buddy Ray.
Ray, that's it.
Ray, yeah.
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 Ray looked like there was
Oh,
there was
you didn't
cognitive.
see.
Tell him that. Tell him that.
Yeah, we didn't. Yeah, that's a great story. So, Adam was coming to visit, and I was living in Seattle at that time, and so we went up. He was going to this place. I think was it Donald Lee Wallace? That was the
Yeah,
location,
that's
right?
right. Yeah.
Yep. So it was the part of the Cascades, and if you don't know Washington, you can kind of. It was probably 3 hours north of Seattle, and then like 3 hours, 2 hours in east into the mountains, in the Cascade Mountains. And we were going out to this location where this kind of famed Bigfoot researcher had spent like 20, 25, 26, 27, 20, many, many years researching. And we were going to this tree, and this tree where his daughter Lori would used to come back to, and she'd go to this tree, and she would talk. I think she called him the big guy. So we go out there, and I have my buddy Ray with me. He's always had a fascination with Sasquatch and Bigfoot. And so when I was like, hey, I'm going out with my buddy Adam, he's like, I'm in. So we headed out there, and I went up to the tree, and I think Lori had some apples and some chocolate and some things that she was sort of, and she was saying, oh, the big guy, and we didn't hear anything, like nothing. I was like, oh man, I drug Ray all the way out here. I'm never gonna hear the end of this, And so, and then
And I was thinking it myself about you.
And then I remember we kind of walked around the area a little bit, and it was like just a little bit of snow. It's probably like really late winter, early spring, and so there was just a little bit of snow on the ground. But it was in this kind of camp area. There was nobody else there. It was just us. And then Lori's like, Jared, why don't you come back to the tree, and let's go back to the two of us and see what we see. So I go back there, and we're sitting there, and she's kind of talking, and all of a sudden I just hear this roar coming from beneath it. And this giant tree, from beneath this tree. And then beneath it. And then it's like if you're in an apartment building and someone's below you, and they, you're too loud, and they like hit the ceiling. I always imagine someone like a big broom handle, and they're like, be quiet up there. The ground, it was like I have this little bad here. It's like taking the ground. It was like hitting the floor of this. It was like knocking underneath us. It went on for minutes, minutes and minutes and minutes. And then we were, I mean, I was If that was Ray's face, you should have seen my face when I first heard that. I mean, it was shocking to me.
Yeah, you were
And
I just remember where Ray was like joking and laughing like guys. We were like guys going out for guns, and then Ray just looked like all his color had gone. I remember thinking, "Oh my god, I hope he's not going to collapse or anything. I'm going to have to carry the dude out."
I mean,
I loved him. He's such a nice guy, but I thought, you
oh
know,
yeah, there's not a time where we don't see each other where we don't talk about this
yeah,
story. I mean, it is, we see each other all the time. But and I'll never forget. So then he came up, and this went on for 20 to 30 minutes. This
Wow.
low level growl, the knocking, and I remember the floor to the forest was like I don't know if you all know like the Hoh rainforest out in Washington State, where it's like has this amazingly, it's like the the ground is made of this really spongy moss, and this area had that real spongy bright green moss. And really, I remember we sat there forever, and I was like, I'm gonna find the entryway. There has to be some sort of like that creature had to have gotten under there somehow. So I could find nothing, no way in, no way out, and it was and there wasn't so much snow that there was like you could see the green, you could see the moss in places, but I'll never forget that ever, ever. And I've thought, and I still think was it a bear? Well, that was a little weird. I didn't see any way in. It was like under the tree, which felt like even more peculiar to me. But yeah, I'll never forget that experience for the rest of my life. Uh,
it's such a weird experience. There's plenty more we could say about, but I just wanted to bring it up because I wanted to know how Ray was. I wanted
oh,
to
he's
know if
good.
he
He's
was
good. He's good, Adam. Yeah, he's good.
okay,
He's
okay.
he's a very successful dentist. Very
Sweet.
happy, successful dentist. Yeah, with a really fun, bizarre Bigfoot encounter. So there you go. He's achieving all of his goals.
Good for him. That sounds so cool. Melissa, did you have any other questions?
What are you most looking forward to, I guess, in your upcoming adventures? Is there a place or maybe a certain kind of cryptid or entity that you're going to research that you can say? Or
Have a couple of sort of, I can't talk much about them, but there is a little expedition that I'm sort of putting together. I mean, one cool thing about the series is I just met all types of people that are, I find people have had these really intense encounters. Most of them don't end with their encounter. They're still searching for answers. They're still searching for evidence, and then it sort of branches out into other curiosities. I feel like once you sort of have this knowledge or this personal understanding that something exists that's not supposed to exist, it kind of sparks other ideas. What else is out there that shouldn't exist? So there's a trip and project that we're looking at in a really extremely remote part of Canada, that we're curious about, that I'm putting together. I can't say more than that, which is such a pain in the butt. But
yeah,
but that's about as far as I can go. So I'm really excited about that.
I would be too.
th-
That's one of the
yeah,
places I want to go.
yeah. I mean, I think it's one of the coolest things about, and I think with all these shows is, um, sometimes it's hard to get funding to go do these trips, And I think the wonderful thing about television and film is that it funds these incredible expeditions, and you come home with a story and an understanding. And even from our time out in Nepal, like I remember talking to the crew and being like, it's all of our jobs to get the shot, and I really I believed like we're going to come here. We've done this thoughtfully, intelligently. We have a really sharp group of experts with us, Adam, Ian, and I was like, we're gonna find something. We're gonna find something. And so I think like obviously there's nowhere I'd go where I'm like, we're not gonna find anything. I think you always have to go thinking that you're gonna crack something, you're gonna see something, you're going to expose something that you haven't seen before. So that's one trip I'm excited about. But other than that, I'm really just right now these shows take, you put so much time and effort into them. I'm really just like sitting back and enjoying, the reaction from obviously the people we filmed with and how happy they are with how this turned out. Obviously, that's like I always feel the most pressure on that. It's like, oh man, have we done their story justice? And then I think the response from the community and the audience has been really wonderful so far too. I think we accomplished what we set out to we accomplished what we set out to do. And I think the stories are like visual and exciting. And so right now I'm kind of just like, you don't get a start in the year with a new show that's come out that has so much excitement behind it. Has been really thrilling. So I'm enjoying that, and fingers crossed we'll get to do more of them moving forward, and hopefully we'll know that in the next couple months. But so far so good, and I'm excited for this Friday too. Like there are some really really cool stories. It's part of me feels like I want to ask you, did you all watch last week's episode?
Not
Yep.
yet.
I haven't seen it yet. No, not yet.
Oh yeah.
I'm waiting to.
For like Greg, what did you think about some of those stories from last week?
Well, they obviously intriguing. Some of the same stuff that I've experienced myself, um, and two, they're actually quite validating because a lot of these, when I first started filming myself, we intentionally left off some of these anecdotal stories and experiences and things like that because they were so outrageous. We thought nobody would believe us, right? So we just kind of stuck to the mundane things. And when I first started going out and looking at some of these other people's telling their stories, I was like, you know, what we experienced was real. Well, I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one who has experienced these kind of things, right? So I think what you're doing is it's almost like a public service because you know people see these kind of things and you know you're going to have some people that dismiss them, you know, dismiss some of the anecdotal things that are going on, you know, the rock throws a howl or something like that, right? But when you couple them with other experiences that other people have had along with more of an encounter that was associated with that same type of anecdotal evidence, they're like, wow, maybe that was an experience that I've had. And, you know, y'all do a wonderful job bringing that out. Uh, and, you know, especially for somebody like me, I've had a ton of experiences, but at first I didn't talk with anybody about them because we wanted our opinions to be our own in the film and come to our own conclusions and not be
Mhm.
influenced by outside uh, personalities or other events or opinions. So with me, and I'm still learning. I don't think there's ever an expert in any of this. So when I watch these episodes of you, it's like, um, wow, other people are having these kind of episodes. So uh,
Yeah.
I think it's extremely validating, other than just being entertaining. But you know, having you put together movies like this myself, I was like, that's a damn good job on your recreations.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, thanks, Greg. Yeah, we filmed almost all of them in the Northwest, and
Yeah.
trying to find that I mean, obviously, some of them like from last Fridays, we have Blaine Rohan who had encountered a jinn, in the middle, like, in the middle of Iraq, or Brendan Cooper who's in Saddam's palace. We're not filming those recreations here. I'll tell you that much. But I thought those were also really cool because they're like a history lesson. You get a sort of, not only do you have this incredible encounter, but you get to explore like the details of one of Saddam's, a couple palaces, but one of his palaces. And I was so excited by that story. I just feel like it offered me as a listener, as just an audience, which obviously, and I'm putting this together, I put myself in that perspective. I thought I just offered so much. Anyway, I think this Friday, there's in this Friday's episode, there's a story that like literally happens 30 minutes from my house, like right up the freeway. And I will never ever drive through that town ever again without thinking about what these two guys, and these guys, I knew them before the show, and not through any sort of stories like this, but they're professional survivalists, and we were developing a survival show, and we were casting for a major network, and all of a sudden we needed to do these survival testing. So the network had basically this, professional survivors. Can they handle this? And this guy was one of our experts, and he would basically look at these potential cast members and tell us if he felt like they were skilled enough to survive in the situation, and whether psychologically they were strong enough to be put in there and they weren't going to be doing any damage to them putting in these really difficult situations. And it just happens to be years later, I was talking to another friend of mine, this woman that used to be on that show Alone, and she's like, oh, you should talk to Patrick, he has a really wild story. And so it's, again, it's so cool when these like I said, there's no like type of person this happens to. And actually, a lot of people in the survival community have these types of encounters. And why? They're just like the climbers of old. They're existing in really remote places, in isolation by themselves. I remember getting done talking to these guys, Patrick and Charlie, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we haven't told you our Bigfoot story yet." I'm like, "Ah, guys, don't tell me this at the end of the interview. What the heck, man?" But it's fascinating, and it happened like 30 minutes up the freeway from my house here. I mean, it's just like so bonkers. So I'll be excited to hear. Let me know what you think about this Friday's episode, because it's Daniel Hamilton stories, and I think you guys know Daniel as well.
Daniel Hamilton, good.
Yeah, he's great.
Speaking of your last episode, the first time I'd ever saw a shadow person was at the Meadow, and I didn't believe in shadow people until I saw one, and then when I did see one, sometimes I went. A lot of times, whenever I see something weird, I go through this process of trying to rationalize it away, right?
Yeah.
But when other people have, the Jinn, it's the same thing. These shadow people, these just whatever name you call them, it's a shadow person. There may be different types of shadow people, but still we all just generalize them as a shadow person. To me, that's why I'm saying it's very validating. These other people of seeing some of these same things. So
yeah, the shadow people. That
what
freaky. Scares me. You know why it scares me? Because they come back. They don't exist. They don't exist where you see them. That's again. I'm just following the stories we've heard and sort of the commonalities between those experiences. I never heard of the shadow person before doing this show, and I think about shadow people a lot after doing this show. But it's again, I think it's really really fascinating. So, well, if you watch Friday, let me know what you think, because there's some really good ones this Friday.
Awesome, Adam. Any last questions?
Yeah, I have a question that I'm gonna, because it's right at the beginning, because I listened to what you said, Jared, very very intently, and at the very beginning, you mentioned about aliens, yeah, and the fact that it scares you. So I'm gonna put you in a dilemma here. Okay, so this is the dilemma, right? So you've got a choice, all right?
All right.
An alien spaceship lands in your garden at the back, all right? And the aliens come out. I'm not talking about those little but ugly greys, yeah? What you've got naked and just not attractive. You've got like two aliens come out. They're dressed well, they look good, yeah? And they say, Jared, would you like to spend a week on our spaceship? You can take your camera, but you got to decide now, and we're going to give you the best footage ever. You got to trust us. Would you go? Would your natural burning curiosity overcome your fear, Jared? Come on.
Only if they ask nicely.
They ask nicely. They ask nicely. Say, this way, Mr. McGilliard.
Oh man, would I go? I think I'd have to.
You would go.
I'd have to. I think I'd have to.
And that's it's like you said, yeah.
I'm like I said, if they're polite. Now, if I just take it, I'm running the opposite way. I don't want to be.
I said not those little greys, because all they do is probe you, and that's not good. I'm saying different ones that just gonna have you camera.
Yeah, what you're presenting is the Disney version of this story. Well, and the other side is the fire in the sky version of that story, which terrifies me.
Yeah.
Terrified me when I was a kid.
I want that.
No end.
I want that for you, Jared. I want a nice experience.
Yeah, Disney experience, I'm in for it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that my footage will all be erased though by the time we get back.
I love how he says well dressed, looks good, very polite, asks politely. So yeah, I love it.
His British accent helps sell the kindness.
Yeah, they've got a British accent. They're not grey. They're not naked, and they're not
Super suave.
None of that.
You say no.
Good question, Adam. Really solid question. Yeah, it is though. The alien stuff. Like when I was a kid, I watched Fire in the Sky, and man,
that's weird. I met Travis Walton. I met him, and I spent 2 hours talking to him. And I used to do cross-examination stuff. Mm-hmm. So I went talking to Travis with I don't do that on people normally. It's invasive, but I was fascinated. You know, I was fascinated. I thought this guy, whole story is that he was on a spaceship. So I sit down and talk to him, and I can tell you, I came away thinking, oh my gosh, this guy has either created such a perfect delusional fantasy, it's unbreakable, or the guy's actually telling the truth. And I was astonished, and that got me interested in aliens. Because before I sat down with him, I was thinking, this is like just like not going to be true. But it came away, the guy's telling the truth. Whatever its truth is, he's telling it. I tell you.
Yeah, and I think that's what I feel sometimes too. It's like this person experienced something traumatic.
Yes.
You know, no matter you can't. It's undeniable, right? But yeah, all that alien stuff is whew, it's heavy. That's the scary stuff for sure. Unless it's your situation, Adam. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I've created.
You're rewriting that. You're rewriting that story in my head. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, Jared, thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing. It was great to meet you. Great to talk to you. And I can't wait to have you back on the show.
Can't wait to come back. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, you four. Great meeting,
All
Adam.
right.
Great seeing you again.
Lovely to
Thank
see
you,
you. I hope
Jared.
to see you soon, Jared. It's been an absolute pleasure to see you again. It brings back a lot of memories. Good, all good.
Oh, good. Oh, I hope there's a couple sketchy ones in there. Come on.
There's always a sketchy one up that damn mountain making me go up that, but I mentioned it.
Yeah, you did. You know, yeah, great to meet you, Greg.